I'd like to show you how to define helper methods that are available in all of your RSpec code for easy use. It's really a great way to make your specs a lot more readable, and RSpec includes a great configuration option to have it be readily available. So I'm going to copy a previous episode. It's code called shared contexts, and I'm going to call RSpec, let's call it helper methods. It's a good name. We're going to go into that directory, and let's remove everything in lib, and let's go into spec and clean things up there. So spec shared, that's gone. Maybe, nope, it's not. Whoops, I did it wrong. RMRF, so that's my problem. RMRF shared, did that wrong again. Okay, now are we better? Okay, that's gone. I'm just gonna delete these. And let's create our first spec. And we'll call it, like the gist of what we're gonna build is a way to make parsing JSON easier, because that's a really common thing to do in Ruby code. Is you have an HTTP request that returns a string, and you want to parse the string from JSON to a hash in Ruby. And for that setup, we will want to have two different specs, and we'll want to go from there. So this is going to be contrived, like things are sometimes, but we'll require spec helper, and we'll say RSpec.describe create, and we'll say expect, we'll say, oh, this is so contrived, I'm so sorry. We'll say describe call, a class method called call, and we'll say it returns a string of JSON. And we'll say expect create.call to be a string. Right, that's a good place to start, is we'll say that it returns a string. We run that test, it fails because it can't find spec helper, because I deleted it, whoopsies. Spec helper, put that in inspector, run that again. Okay, it fails, we don't have create. Let's create it. We'll put it in mkdir lib create, class create. Run the test, it fails because it's not required. Undefined method call, that's great. A big truck just drove by. If you heard that, I'm sorry. Expected nil to be string, hi. Okay, and then we're gonna say, and we said it returns a string of JSON. So let's make that even better. And we'll say res, and we'll say expect JSON.parse res to be. We'll just say it works, right? We're just trying to drive this out. And it's a silly example, as it goes with these things. Okay, so we require JSON, which is available in this Ruby standard library. And here we're saying expect JSON.parse res to be. And it's saying unexpected token at hi, because hi is not valid JSON. Well, instead, we'll make it valid JSON. We'll say message hi. Run it again. Okay, it passes. This is useful. We'll say it returns JSON with a message. And we'll say expect JSON.parse, which returns a hash. We'll say message. Whoops. Message to B to equal hi. Okay, great. That passes. And here we've got this JSON parse. And yeah, sure, this becomes moot because it's, being called here, so it's less of a relevant test. But as always, these are contrived examples, and we'll get to the good parts soon. But let's make a method called def. We'll say, we'll call it JSON as hash, and we'll pass in JSON string. We'll say spec JSON as hash. Maybe you'd call it toJSON. 2JSON wouldn't be right. I think JSON as hash is a good one. So, because that's what it does. It takes a string, converts it to JSON, or parses it out as if it was JSON. Run it, expect it to evaluate, because we want to do JSON.parse, JSON string. Run it again, it passes. Right here we can say hash as JSON, or other way around, JSON as hash. Run it again. Okay, it passes. That's neat. Let's see if we can make it better and more useful. What if we wanted to pass it as a symbol? We get nil because it parses it as string quotes, and that's kind of annoying. So let's see. Let's open up Dash, and we'll open up the Ruby docs. We'll say Ruby JSON, and let's look at the docs for this. There should be a way to say keys can be symbols. Whether it specifies whether the return hash key should be symbols, defaults to false. Ruby on Rails provides a thing called, what is it? I forget what the method call is. Let's look it up. Rails, it's indifferent, hash with indifferent access. So they have a special hash in Rails that lets you fetch via symbol or quotes. But we're not in Rails, let's not worry about that. But let's pass in this option of symbolized names. And we'll say true, because I prefer that. I think it's a little nicer. And now we don't have to change it everywhere because it's in one method. So that's pretty nice. Okay, let's add another spec called update spec. It will be very similar to create, but we'll call it update. Yeah, I could be using describe class and stuff, but these are just examples. And we'll say update contains a message that just says updated. We'll just make it slightly different so that it's something different. Okay, we don't have that class. We'll call it there. Let's just copy it, make it easy on ourselves. Update, and we'll say updated. Let's change this to be from hi to be created. Okay, let's make sure all the tests pass. All the tests are passing, but see, we've got this JSON as hash, and it's we're using it, but we've got it duplicated. So let's clean that up. We could put it in spec helper, and that is there's a lot of stuff going on in spec helper with comments because I never cleaned it out. But at the bottom of our spec helper, we could put JSON as hash. And because we require spec helper up top, it will be available. So we'll delete it here. Let's run our tests. They pass. And that is certainly one way we could do it. We don't need to require JSON here. Let's instead just require JSON right above it and do that. Something you can do in Ruby too is you can just require it in the method body, like where we use it. So that's also an option. That kind of packages this all together. Now, this is working. We have a method that we've defined and we're sharing. And but the problem here is that, let's say you have dozens of helper methods, which you will have in a non-trivial code base, like in this example. You probably want to put them in some other files. So a general pattern is in spec support directory, which I just created a file, but what I meant to say was that. And then you could call it whatever you want. I'll call it JSON helper. And we'll define a method called JSON helper. Let's call it, we'll do capital JSON. And we'll see if that works. It might not, it might, we'll see. Okay, run that again. Things still pass. I didn't save this, that's why. Okay, now things fail. It's saying undefined method JSON as hash. We could do this. We could say include JSON helper. Run that. Okay, it's not being found. We can do require relative support JSON helper. Run that, it passes, but we don't want to have to do that in every single one, right? So what RSpec allows us to do, which is quite nice, is that there is an include config option. And I'll just put it at the top here because I left all the comments here. I should clean it out, but you can do config.include JSON helper. Got to require it, of course. Support / JSON helper. Great, now those tests are passing. And that's really the gist of the episode, is that RSpec has a thing called include. You can pass in JSON helper, or you can pass in the module you want as long as it's available. And then within all of your RSpec tests, you can call that method. That's pretty cool. Let's make it even better. And we'll have like another contrived example, but we'll say it can call party time. We'll just make a silly method called party time that outputs an emoji. We'll say expect party time to equal now. Run it. Okay, party time doesn't exist. Okay, let's define a party helper. So in spec support, we'll define party helper. We'll say module party helper has def party time. And let's make it a boolean, and we'll just make it return true, and we'll say expect party time to be true. Still don't have party time. That's because here, we could do this again. Except it's not called party helper, it's called, or party time is called party helper. Run our tests again, they pass, right? We're calling party time and it's true. Hey, this is the end of the video. I ended up going off in the weeds after this point, but this really encapsulates what I wanted to show with how to include helper methods in RSpec. Sorry for the awkward stiff ending, but you basically just require the files or have them loaded, and then you can include them as needed. It's really helpful to just include the ones that you're using so that you don't end up automatically including a bunch of methods that you don't intend to, or overwriting things accidentally. That's it. Hope this is helpful. Thank you. See ya.